One of the most controversial sermons that you preached is the sermon you preached that ended up being that soundbite about goddamn America.
Where governments lie, God does not lie. Where governments change, God does not change. And I'm through now. But let me leave you with one more thing. Governments fail. The government in this text, comprised of Caesar, Quirinius, Pontius Pilate, Pontius Pilate. The Roman government failed. The British government used to rule from east to west. The British government had a Union Jack. She colonized Kenya, Ghana, Nigeria, Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, and Hong Kong. Her navies ruled the 7 seas all the way down to the tip of Argentina in the Falklands. But the British government failed. The Russian government failed. The Japanese government failed. The German government failed. And the United States of America government, when it came to treating her citizens of Indian descent fairly, she failed. She put them on reservations. When it came to treating her citizens of Japanese descent fairly, she failed. She put them in internment prison camps. When it came to treating the citizens of African descent fairly, America failed. She put them in chains. The government put them on slave quarters, put them on auction blocks, put them in cotton fields, put them in inferior schools, put them in substandard housing, put them in scientific experiments, put them in the lowest paying jobs, put them outside the equal protection of the law, kept them out of their racist bastions of higher education, and locked them into positions of hopelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America? No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America, that's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating her citizens as less than human. God damn America as long as she tries to act like she is God and she is supreme.
What did you mean when you said that?
When you start confusing God and government, your allegiance is to government, a particular government, and not to God, that you're in serious trouble, because governments fail people, and governments change, and governments lie. And those 3 points of the sermon, and that was the context in which I was illustrating how the governments, biblically, and the governments since biblical times up to our time, change, how they fail, and how they lie. And when you start talking about my government, right or wrong, I don't think that is consistent with what the will of God says or the Word of God says. That governments don't say right or wrong. The governments that want to kill innocents are not consistent with the will of God. And that you are made in the image of God. You're not made in the image of any particular government. We have the freedom here in this country to talk about that publicly, where in some other places you're dead if you say the wrong thing about your government.
Well, you could be almost crucified for saying what you've said here in this country.
That's true. That's true. But you can be crucified. You can be crucified publicly. You can be crucified by corporate-owned media. But I mean, what I just meant was you can be killed in other countries by the government for saying that. Dr. King, of course, was vilified. And most of us forget that after he was assassinated, but the year before he was assassinated, April 4th, 1967, at the Riverside Church, when he preached against the war in Vietnam, he talked about racism, militarism, and capitalism. He became vilified. He got ostracized not only by the majority of Americans in the press, he got vilified by his own community. They thought he had overstepped his bounds. He was no longer talking about civil rights and being able to sit down at lunch counters, and that he should not talk about things like the war in Vietnam. He preached about...
Lyndon Johnson was furious at that, as you know. That's where they broke.
And that's where a lot of the African-American community broke with him, too. He was vilified by Roger Wilkins' daddy, Roy Wilkins. He was vilified by Jackie Robinson. He was vilified by all of the Negro leaders who felt he'd overstepped his bounds, talking about an unjust war. And that part of King is not lifted up every year, January 15th. 1963, I Have a Dream was lifted up, and passages from that, sound bites, if you will, from that March on Washington speech. But the king who preached the end of the, I've been to the mountaintop, I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land, I may not get there with you. That part of the speech is talked about, not the fact that he was in Memphis siding with garbage collectors. Nothing about Resurrection City, nothing about the poor.
Resurrection City was the march in Washington for the poor.
For the poor.
Yeah.
That part of King is not talked about because we want to keep that away from the public eye and the public memory, and it's been 40 years now.